Hey, what's up? This is Carmen Chloe. I am the clarity coach for Kingdom Moms, Widows, and Wives. You can find out more about me via carmenchloeglobal.com. So in today's video, the title of this video is Doing Your Grief Work is Not Optional. I'm going to say that again. Doing your grief work is not optional. So for those of you who know me, those of you who may not know me, I have been on a journey of rediscovering who I am and rebuilding my life after the sudden loss of my late husband in December 2018. During that time, I have learned a lot about grief and loss and just how to navigate this journey. So one of the things that I have learned is that doing your grief work is not optional. And there's a truck passing by making a lot of noise, of course. But y'all are gonna get this message today. So one of the things that I've learned on this journey is that doing your grief work is not optional. A lot of people, when they lose someone that is near and dear to them, they don't know how to process their feelings. They don't know how to grieve properly. They don't know how to mourn, and they kind of just push it to the back burner. And then years go on and they've not processed that loss. They've not processed their grief. They've not mourned properly. And I just learned throughout this journey, and also more recently, that you have to grieve the loss of the person that passed away, and you have to mourn them as well. And there is a difference between grief and mourning, and I want to give you guys a definition that I actually looked up. So by definition, grief is another truck. This is how I can tell that that this message is needed. So many distractions, Jesus. So as I was saying, by definition, grief is the constellation of internal thoughts and feelings that we have when someone dies. So basically, grief is internal, meaning that we give to the experience of loss. So grief is something that we feel on the inside. Mourning, on the other hand, is when you take the grief that you have on the inside and you express it outside of yourself. So basically, grief is internal, mourning is external, okay? So some of the ways that people mourn are crying, talking, journaling, letter writing, doing art therapy, grief therapy through art. They have that for a lot of children's grief counseling, and then also music therapy. So what I've learned is that grieving without mourning can be dangerous. Unmourned grief can actually turn into bitterness, it can turn into regret, and it can turn into other things that you don't necessarily want to show up, because again, mourning is external, and when you keep it on the inside and you don't express it on the outside, it can turn into something that it was never intended to turn into. Now, it can be common for some women, especially moms, to avoid or neglect or not even know how to mourn or even grieve the loss of their spouse. So for me, almost 2.5 years after the death of my late husband, I've realized that I have not fully mourned his death. I have done some mourning, but I've not fully mourned his death. And when I reflect back, I see how I replaced mourning with busyness and with achievements, because remember, again, mourning is external. So instead of going through the process of all the crying and the journaling and the talking, I replaced those actions with busyness and with achievements. In the time that I've lost my late husband, I published a book. I published my second book last year in 2020. I became a certified life coach. I rushed to get a job months after he passed away when we moved to another state, and I didn't have to get a job at the time. It was just me doing something instead of sitting in that grief and allowing myself to mourn. Now, I have mourned some, but I haven't mourned his death completely, and I just recently had that breakthrough, and it was uncomfortable and it was painful for me to come to that realization, but it was much needed. And again, it was a breakthrough, which means that I've broken through to another level and to another side. And the reason why I, instead of mourning the way that I should have, instead of doing that and replacing it with busyness and achievements, like the reason why that I did that is because I was in survival mode after my husband passed away. Like, we literally had an eviction notice on our door the day after he passed away. So we had to move less than 30 days after he passed away. I had to find a new vehicle. We temporarily lived with family. We had to leave from that family's house and we moved to a completely different state. So I was in survival mode after my husband passed away. And I realize now that I didn't know how to come out of survival mode. I was just in autopilot survival mode because of all of the things that I went through after. And I learned a new term from someone who I'm working with now, who has helped me tremendously. I learned that all of the things that I went through after my husband passed away that didn't have anything necessarily to do with his death, the eviction, the repossession, the staying with family, and then something, you know, happening at that family's house and us having to temporarily live in a hotel and then move to another state, like all of that is considered stacked trauma. So while I'm in survival mode going through stacked trauma, I never really fully transitioned into mourning properly. And I came through this major breakthrough and revelation by intentionally investing in my grief work. And not only did I invest in my grief work, because a lot of times we invest in things, courses and coaches and books, and we never do anything with them. But not only did I intentionally invest in my grief work, but I also applied what I learned by doing the work. And that's the only way that you're going to get a breakthrough, by intentionally doing your grief work, applying what you learn by doing the work. So the message for you who is watching this video, because it's not a random coincidence that you're watching this video wherever you're watching it at, whether it be Facebook, Instagram, or YouTube, the message for you who is watching this video is do your grief work. You can't avoid it. You can't push it under the table. You can't just continue on with life as if you didn't experience a major loss. You have to intentionally do your grief work. So how exactly do you do your grief work? By investing in courses, by investing in books, by investing in coaching, by investing in counseling, by investing in therapy, okay? You can take your pick of what works best for you. Some people work best with self-study courses. Some people work best working with someone face-to-face. For me personally, for the work that I'm doing in this season, I prefer to work with someone face-to-face, and I have invested in that. And in the beginning, I felt like, oh, if I invest in a grief coach or a grief counselor or therapist, it's gonna have to be someone who has gone through widowhood as well. That was my mentality. However, God divinely connected me to the perfect grief therapist for me. They have not experienced the loss of a husband, but they have experienced great loss in other areas, and they have one hell of a story just like I have. So it was definitely a divine connection for me to get connected to this person, and I'm so grateful that I took the time to invest in that. So for you who is watching this video, I want to tell you that you have to do your grief work. You can't avoid it. It's not optional. You have to do it. So if you feel led to work with me in this season, if you feel led for me to be your coach throughout this journey, I invite you to schedule a 15-minute discovery call via carmenchloecoaching.com. Also, be sure to grab my free clarity course. You can get that on my website, which is carmenchloeglobal.com. It's a completely free course that is going to walk you through a series of videos that will help you to gain more clarity. And again, I am officially accepting clients. So if you feel led to work with me in this season and you're ready to go ahead and invest in doing the work, the grief work, the life work, the identity work, all of that, schedule your 15-minute discovery call with me via carmenchloecoaching.com. Thank you so much for watching this video. I pray the peace of God that surpasses all understanding, and I pray that you're able to receive a great breakthrough in the area that you need it the most. Have a great day. Peace.